Hello, everybody. My name is Spencer McDuffy,
My name is Martha Vasquez.
and today we're going to take a little bit of time to talk to you about the people known as the Garifuna. The Garifuna people are actually people who originated from the coast of Africa. They were transported in the Atlantic slave trade on a ship that would end up to be shipwrecked. These slaves would actually escape the ship and swim to the St. Vincent Islands, where they would inhabit the island for the next 100 years or so. This occurred in 1635, and eventually the mixture of the West African culture that the slaves brought with them and the Carib Indians or the Arawak Indians who inhabited the island before they got there led to the rise of what we now know to be the people known as the Garifuna. The Garifuna actually lived peacefully on St. Vincent from 1635 to 1796 for over 160 years. Shortly after, they would become victims of colonization, as you can see right here in 1763. The British would actually come into St. Vincent Island and seek to use the island to plant sugarcane. After years of war between the Garifuna people and the British, the Garifuna were finally forcibly removed from St. Vincent, and in 1797, they were relocated to Honduras by the British. Eventually, they would migrate from the coast of Honduras into the mainlands. Um, as you can see today, the Garifuna populations can be found in Guatemala, Honduras, Belize, and the northern St. Vincent Bay, which is right here, and also in the U.S., which would be up in this region if this map was expanded.
Belize has a subtropical climate. From March through September, it's hot and humid, and the temperatures get cooler in late October through February. The climate in Honduras is tropical with cooler, more temperate weather in the mountains. The north coast is very hot with rain throughout the year. The dry season is from November to April, and the wet seasons run from May to October. The weather in Nicaragua is also tropical. Dry seasons start from January to June, and in August and September it often rains once a day. In Guatemala, the climate is tropical, hot. It's humid in lowlands and cooler in highlands. The Garifuna population ranges from 200,000 to 500,000. It has 72% illiterate or semi-illiterate people, and only 10% of Garifunas pursue education after elementary school. Over here is the table of the countries and the fertility rates, which would be Belize, Honduras, Nicaragua, Guatemala, and the United States. What makes the Garifunas unique is how they escaped from slavery when they were being brought from Africa. Their social and cultural characteristics are manifest in their ancient family and social structures, which have suffered very little changes. They still share their dialect, circular dances, religious practices, punta dance, tales, banana cultivation, and rooster and pig sacrifices with the indigenous people of the Amazon. Their ways of production are still based in subsistence farming. Among the different communities, there is a great potential of production, and in most cases, the land is very fertile for farming. However, the only people involved are the elders, because young people believe farming is not a great source of income. Their housing consists of small huts with walls made of royal palm, sugar cane, and of cement blocks. The ceiling is commonly made of hay, however, they also use zinc as a ceiling too. Garifuna still maintain their own religious system that is a mixture of African and Amerindian traditions to which they have incorporated Catholic elements. Garifuna food and drink make use of a combination of native Central American crops and African staples, including fish, chicken, cassava, bananas, and plantains. Machuca, a dish of mashed green plantains with coconut milk, soup, and fried fish, is a common example of a traditional Garifuna dish. And right here is an example of machuca dish. And we will be showing a video that shows a little bit of their culture.
The handmade percussion, the hip swaying dances, the emotional lyrics. It's a cultural immersion like no other from the Garifuna of the North Coast. The Garifuna are descendants of African slaves who were shipwrecked in the 1600s and then intermarried with the Carib Indians. Today, there are several Garifuna communities along Honduras' north coast and on the Bay Islands, with many in the Telebay area. Each dance style tells a different story about work, family, ancestry, even death. The punta is the most popular, originally a fertility dance of West African origin. Today, the punta is often performed during holidays and at parties.
As you can see, they have a very rich cultural tradition. And now we're going to continue on to geopolitics of the Garifuna. The Garifunas, uniquely enough, do not believe in politics. They believe they are peaceful and that they can handle their own problems without the intervention of any type of legal force. They are largely uninvolved in politics. However, that's not to say that they're not affected by politics or that they don't interact in politics on a smaller scale. In some areas, a governor is in charge of providing justice between the people. In March of 2012, the Garifuna chief, Chatoyer, was actually declared the first national hero of St. Vincent, and the day was made a national holiday. Sections of the Central American Garifuna community are actually taking legal action against their government and seeking a case for reparations and symbolic citizenship. The Garifuna have been feared and discriminated against and accused of devil worship, polygamy, voodoo, and speaking a secret language. As you can see right here, here is a representative of the Garifuna people who's seeking equality in the face of discrimination against this people. As we begin to look at the economy of the Garifuna people, you have to remember that the Garifuna people are located in various locations across the world. So their economic statuses vary. Many Garifuna have migrated to the United States in search of a more economic opportunity. The U.S. is considered to be a developing country, although we might not think of it that way. But it is considered a developing country because of its large amount of account and budget deficits. The Garifunas who are living in the U.S. can mostly be found in the cities that have the most economic opportunity. These cities include Chicago, Houston, Los Angeles, Miami, New Orleans, and New York. Garifuna also commonly send money home to their native lands to help out their communities and their families who still remain living in Central America. Moving on to a different part of the world, the Garifuna who live in Honduras face a very different economic status than those who live in the United States. Honduras is also considered a developing country, the same as the United States, but it's much more poverty-stricken. Military rule, corruption, a huge wealth gap, crime, and a large amount of natural disasters have rendered Honduras as one of the least developed countries and least secure countries in all of Central America. 73% of the population is living in poverty, and 80% of rural homes do not produce enough income to cover their basic living needs. So as you can see, the living situation here in Honduras is quite unique and quite different than it is in the United States. In Guatemala, though, it's very similar to Honduras. It is also a developing country, and the factors that cause Guatemala to be a developing country, to have its current economic status, is its history of colonization, its uneven distribution of wealth, land exploitation by the rich, and civil war and political instability. Most inhabitants of Guatemala are poor agricultural laborers. Belize is also very similar to Guatemala. It is a developing nation that also has a very large wealth gap and a rural population that has limited access to education. Belize is actually ranked in the 10 least developed countries in all of Latin America. So as you can see, the economic status of the Garifuna people varies depending on where the Garifuna people are living, and they do live in numerous locations. In conclusion, the Garifuna are regarded as the last remaining descendants of the Amerindian people. When the Garifuna people are gone, there will be no more people who live with the culture and live through the traditions of the Amerindian people. They are often thought as the only people left who reflect the cultural and traditions of the original Amerindian inhabitants of the Caribbean islands. Their populations are declining, their culture is dying out, mostly because of globalization. Despite this, recent attention in Belize and in the U.S. has been focused on reviving the cultural and traditions of the Garifuna people. These right here are two examples of initiatives in both the United States and Belize that have been started to preserve the culture of the Garifuna people. Thank you for listening to our presentation.
And hopefully you learned a little bit more of the Garifuna culture.